Welcome to the Spitzen-Körper Thelema. Helena Petrovna Blavatsky's The Secret Doctrine, published in 1888, stands as one of the most ambitious acts of synthesis in Western esotericism, an attempt to collapse the boundaries between Hindu and Buddhist metaphysics, Hermetic philosophy, and scientific materialism into a single coherent system. The passage we examine today comes from the opening commentary to stanza I of the stanzas of Dhyan, the purported ancient text that Blavatsky claims to be translating and elucidating. This is not merely theological speculation. This is the foundation, Blavatsky's attempt to establish a new metaphysics for the occult world, one that absorbs the language of post-Kantian idealism, Sanskrit philosophy, and Victorian scientific discourse into a unified doctrine. The text belongs to what we might call the theosophical synthesis, a current that emerged from Blavatsky's merger of transcendentalism, Oriental studies, and the remnants of 19th century Romantic esotericism. It stands in direct conversation with Swedenborg's correspondences, with Paracelsus's microcosm and macrocosm doctrine, and with the Hermetic axiom as above, so below, but it translates these older languages into the vocabulary of consciousness, cosmic cycles, and illusion. What makes this moment crucial is that Blavatsky is not merely recounting Eastern doctrine. She is performing an alchemical act. She is showing Western initiates how to read reality through the lens of Maya, the Indian philosophical concept that all phenomenal existence is illusory, relative rather than absolute. But she does something her predecessors did not. She insists that this illusion is not false but graded, that consciousness itself rises through layers of increasingly real perception, each one convinced of its own reality until the next awakening reveals it as shadow. This is a doctrine with teeth. It will reshape how the entire Western magical tradition understands the relationship between mind, matter, and divinity for generations to come. The passage itself divides into two movements. First, the commentary on Maya and illusion, the epistemological argument. Second, the 7 stanzas themselves, which present the cosmological narrative, the origination of the universe from an incomprehensible darkness, through the agency of the Dhyan-Chohans, the 7 creative spirits, and finally the establishment of cyclical manifestation through what Blavatsky calls the Great Breath. This is eschatology masquerading as cosmology. Now the text, uninterrupted, verbatim excerpt of the latter are as old as the hills that have contained such schools from time immemorial, and the Hinayana and Mahayana schools, the latter, that of the great vehicle, both teach the same doctrine in reality. Yana, or vehicle, in Sanskrit, Vahan, is a mystic expression, both vehicles inculcating that man may escape the sufferings of rebirths and even the false bliss of devachan, by obtaining wisdom and knowledge, which alone can dispel the fruits of illusion and ignorance. Maya or illusion is an element which enters into all finite things, for everything that exists has only a relative, not an absolute, reality, since the appearance which the hidden noumenon assumes for any observer depends upon his power of cognition. To the untrained eye of the savage, a painting is at first an unmeaning confusion of streaks and daubs of color, while an educated eye sees instantly a face or a landscape. Nothing is permanent except the one hidden absolute existence which contains in itself the noumena of all realities. The existences belonging to every plane of being, up to the highest Dhyan-Chohans, are, in degree, of the nature of shadows cast by a magic lantern on a colorless screen. But all things are relatively real, for the cognizer is also a reflection, and the things cognized are therefore as real to him as himself. Whatever reality things possess must be looked for in them before or after they have passed like a flash through the material world, but we cannot cognize any such existence directly, So long as we have sense instruments which bring only material existence into the field of our consciousness, whatever plane our consciousness may be acting in, both we and the things belonging to that plane are, for the time being, our only realities. As we rise in the scale of development, we perceived that during the stages through which we have passed we mistook shadows for realities, and the upward progress of the ego is a series of progressive awakenings, each advance bringing with it the idea that now, at last, we have reached reality, but only when we shall have reached the absolute consciousness, and blended our own with it, shall we be free from the delusions produced by Maya. Stanza I. Continued. 5. Darkness alone filled the boundless all, for father, mother and son were once more one, and the son had not awakened yet for the new wheel and his pilgrimage thereon. Darkness is father-mother, light their son, says an old Eastern proverb. Light is inconceivable except as coming from some source which is the cause of it, and as, in the instance of primordial light, that source is unknown, though as strongly demanded by reason and logic. Therefore it is called darkness by us, from an intellectual point of view. As to borrowed or secondary light, whatever its source, it can be but of a temporary myopic character. Darkness, then, is the eternal matrix in which the sources of light appear and disappear. Nothing is added to darkness to make of it light, or to light to make it darkness, on this our plane. They are interchangeable, and scientifically light is but a mode of darkness and vice versa. Yet both are phenomena of the same noumenon, which is absolute darkness to the scientific mind, and but a great twilight to the perception of the average mystic, though to that of the spiritual eye of the initiate it is absolute light. How far we discern the light that shines in darkness depends upon our powers of vision. What is light to us is darkness to certain insects, and the eye of the clairvoyant sees illumination where the normal eye perceives only blackness. When the whole universe was plunged in sleep, had returned to its one primordial element, there was neither center of luminosity, nor eye to perceive light, and darkness necessarily filled the boundless all. The father-mother are the male and female principles in root nature, the opposite poles that manifest in all things on every plane of cosmos, or spirit and substance, in a less allegorical aspect, the resultant of which is the universe, or the sun. They are once more one when in the night of Brahma, during Pralaya, all in the objective universe has returned to its one primal and eternal cause, to reappear at the following dawn, as it does periodically. Karuna, eternal cause, was alone. To put it more plainly, Karuna is alone during the nights of Brahma. The previous objective universe has dissolved into its one primal and eternal cause, and is, so to say, held in solution in space, to differentiate again and crystallize out anew at the following Manvantaric dawn, which is the commencement of a new day or new activity of Brahma, the symbol of the universe. In esoteric parlance, Brahma is father, mother, son, or spirit, soul and body at once, each personage being symbolical of an attribute, and each attribute or quality being a graduated efflux of divine breath in its cyclic differentiation, involutionary and evolutionary. In the cosmic physical sense, it is the universe, the planetary chain and the earth; in the purely spiritual, the unknown deity, planetary spirit, and man, the son of the two, the creature of spirit and matter, and a manifestation of them in his periodical appearances on earth during the wheels, or the Manvantaras. Stanza I. Continued. 6. The seven sublime lords and the seven truths had ceased to be, and the universe, the son of necessity, was immersed in paranishpana, absolute perfection, paranirvana, which is yongrub, to be outbreathed by that which is and yet is not. Naught was. The seven sublime lords are the seven creative spirits, the Dhyan-Chohans, who correspond to the Hebrew Elohim. It is the same hierarchy of archangels to which Saint Michael, Saint Gabriel, and others belong, in the Christian theogony. Only while Saint Michael, for instance, is allowed in dogmatic Latin theology to watch over all the promontories and gulfs, in the esoteric system, the Dhyanis watch successively over one of the rounds and the great root traces of our planetary chain. They are, moreover, said to send their bodhisattvas, the human correspondents of the Dhyani Buddhas during every round and race. Out of the 7 truths and revelations, or rather revealed secrets, 4 only have been handed to us, as we are still in the 4th round, and the world also has only had 4 Buddhas, so far. This is a very complicated question, and will receive more ample treatment later on. So far there are only 4 truths, and 4 Vedas, say the Hindus and Buddhists. For a similar reason Ianus insisted on the necessity of 4 Gospels. But as every new root trace at the head of a round must have its revelation and revealers, the next round will bring the 5th, the following the 6th, and so on. Paranishpana is the absolute perfection to which all existences attain at the close of a great period of activity, or Mahamanvantara, and in which they rest during the succeeding period of repose. In Tibetan it is called Yongrub. Up to the day of the Yogacarya school the true nature of paranirvana was taught publicly, but since then it has become entirely esoteric, hence so many contradictory interpretations of it. It is only a true idealist who can understand it. Everything has to be viewed as ideal, with the exception of paranirvana, by him who would comprehend that state, and acquire a knowledge of how non-ego, voidness, and darkness are 3 in one and alone self-existent and perfect. It is absolute, however, only in a relative sense, for it must give room to still further absolute perfection, according to a higher standard of excellence in the following period of activity, just as a perfect flower must cease to be a perfect flower and die, in order to grow into a perfect fruit. The secret doctrine teaches the progressive development of everything, worlds as well as atoms, and this stupendous development has neither conceivable beginning nor imaginable end. Our universe is only one of an infinite number of universes, all of them sons of necessity, because links in the great cosmic chain of universes, each one standing in the relation of an effect as regards its predecessor, and being a cause as regards its successor. The appearance and disappearance of the universe are pictured as an outbreathing and inbreathing of the great breath, which is eternal, and which, being motion, is one of the 3 aspects of the absolute, abstract space and duration being the other 2. When the great breath is projected, it is called the divine breath, and is regarded as the breathing of the unknowable deity, the one existence, which breathes out a thought, as it were, which becomes the cosmos. So also is it when the divine breath is inspired again the universe disappears into the bosom of the Great Mother, who then sleeps wrapped in her invisible robes. By that which is and yet is not is meant the great breath itself, which we can only speak of as absolute existence, but cannot picture to our imagination as any form of existence that we can distinguish from non-existence. The 3 periods, the present, the past, and the future, are in the esoteric philosophy a compound time, for the 3 are a composite number only in relation to the phenomenal plane, but in the realm of noumena have no abstract validity. As said in the scriptures, the past time is the present time, as also the future, which, though it has not come into existence, still is, according to a precept in the Prasanga Madhyamika teaching. Our ideas, in short, on duration and time are all derived from our sensations according to the laws of association. Inextricably bound up with the relativity of human knowledge, they nevertheless can have no existence except in the experience of the individual ego, and perish when its evolutionary march dispels the mire of phenomenal existence. What is time, for instance, but the panoramic succession of our states of consciousness? In the words of a master, I feel irritated at having to use these three clumsy words, past, present, and future, miserable concepts of the objective phases of the subjective whole. They are about as ill-adapted for the purpose as an axe for fine carving. One has to acquire paramartha lest one should become too easy a prey to samvriti, is a philosophical axiom. Stanza I. Continued. 7. The causes of existence had been done away with, the visible that was, and the invisible that is, rested in eternal non-being, the one being. The causes of existence mean not only the physical causes known to science, but the metaphysical causes, the chief of which is the desire to exist, an outcome of nidana and maya. This desire for a sentient life shows itself in everything, from an atom to a sun, and is a reflection of the divine thought propelled into objective existence, into a law that the universe should exist. According to esoteric teaching, the real cause of that supposed desire, and of all existence, remains forever hidden, and its first emanations are the most complete abstractions mind can conceive. These abstractions must of necessity be postulated as the cause of the material universe which presents itself to the senses and intellect, and they underlie the secondary and subordinate powers of nature, which, anthropomorphized, have been worshipped as God and gods by the common herd of every age. It is impossible to conceive anything without a cause. The attempt to do so makes the mind a blank. This is virtually the condition to which the mind must come at last when we try to trace back the chain of causes and effects. But both science and religion jump to this condition of blankness much more quickly than is necessary, for they ignore the metaphysical abstractions which are the only conceivable cause of physical concretions. These abstractions become more and more concrete as they approach our plane of existence, until finally they phenomenalize in the form of the material universe, by a process of conversion of metaphysics into physics, analogous to that by which steam can be condensed into water, and the water frozen into ice. The idea of eternal non-being, which is the one being, will appear a paradox to anyone who does not remember that we limit our ideas of being to our present consciousness of existence, making it a specific, instead of a generic term. End verbatim. What Blavatsky has accomplished here is a philosophical move of considerable subtlety. She takes the Kantian distinction between the noumenal and phenomenal, the thing in itself versus its appearance, and she weaponizes it. The argument is not merely that we cannot know reality as it is that every level of consciousness believes itself to be perceiving reality, and each level is correct within its own frame. The savage seeing only color, the educated person seeing a landscape, the clairvoyant seeing energy, none are wrong. They are all reading the same underlying form through the filters available to their cognition. This is a radical democratization of truth claims, but with a built-in hierarchy. Some filters are finer than others. The doctrine of Maya, which Blavatsky imports here, becomes not a denial of reality but an epistemology, a theory of how consciousness acquires knowledge. What germinated in this passage mutated into the entire Western theosophical understanding of initiation, not as the acquisition of secret facts, but as the refinement of perception itself. Each initiate grade becomes a further stripping away of the Mayavic veil. The Hermetic principle of know thyself transforms into refine the instrument of knowing. This seeded everything from Rudolf Steiner's anthroposophy to the modern New Thought movements, even to contemporary Silicon Valley mysticism, all of which accept the premise that consciousness is the primary variable and that reality conforms to the observer's capacity to perceive it. But observe the secondary argument, the doctrine of cyclic cosmology. The universe is not created once and for all. It breathes in and out eternally, a great breath. Each exhalation is a new universe, each inhalation repose in paranishpana, absolute perfection. The Dhyan-Chohans, the 7 creative spirits, are the governors of these cycles. And crucially, the 4 truths, the 4 Vedas, the 4 Gospels are not arbitrary, they correspond to the 4 rounds of our cosmic chain. There is a 5th coming. This is eschatology masked as cosmological law, and it will give later theosophists and anthroposophists a framework for reading history as cosmic evolution. It becomes the template for all subsequent occult theories of human development through root races and cosmic ages. Next, Arthur Edward Waite, The Doctrine and Literature of the Kabbalah. The Spitzen-Körper Thelema. If this archive serves you, support it on Patreon. Link in the description.